Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first fireside chat of 2022. I'm Marcelo Resbini, Director of Startup Grind in Amsterdam. As you know, Startup Grind is the largest startup community globally. We have more than 600 chapters connecting over 3 million startups every year. We provide education, inspiration, and networking opportunities to startups. And we do that by hosting events like this one. Just let me also remind you that our events are recorded, and you can always find the recordings on our website. Before introducing our speaker of today, I'd like to briefly introduce our team in the Netherlands. So, Hande, hello, Hande. Hande runs our digital
Hello.
marketing. Great. Chichi, hi, Chichi.
Hey guys.
Hello, Chichi builds our fruitful partnerships. And Daniela, hi, Dana. Daniela manages our events and community. So we are on a mission to bring the different tech hubs in the Netherlands together. And today marks our kickoff for our hashtag Dutch Startups United. So please tag us on your posts and spread the word. Now, let's start our fireside chat. Our first speaker of 2022 is the CEO and co-founder of Equalture, a scale-up from Rotterdam. She started Equalture together with her twin sister, and she is on a mission to disrupt the HR tech market by replacing the so-called gut feeling by data when recruiting and building teams. She is a very active public speaker and was nominated to several awards, including the top 8 most talented female entrepreneurs in the Netherlands. Wow, I'm talking about Charlotte Melkert. Team, let's give a warm welcome to Charlotte.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Charlotte, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Would you like to say a few words about yourself and Equalture?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, thanks for the invitation. Nice to be here. And thanks everyone for joining as well. I hope I can say some valuable stuff for you today, share some valuable stuff. So my name is Charlotte. I am one of the co-founders of Equalture, which Marcelo briefly introduced already, but we are a recruitment tech company. We build gamified assessments to basically help companies create an objective first impression of their candidates, which is based on science instead of a gut feeling and any bias that you might have along the way, with the aim to make sure that everyone gets a fair opportunity to get hired for a job. Basically to equalize the hiring playing field. We think it's in the 21st century, it should make sense that we hire people by looking at some scientific insights instead of still relying on the resume that we tend to use for a very long time already. But it's everything but predictive of how you would perform in the workplace. So that's what we do. We started the company, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Indeed, started together with my twin sister. Nowadays, we are with 35 people, I think, from the top of my mind. We have our office in Rotterdam, very diverse team as well. We have like 19 different nationalities, I think, in the team, and 52% is female. I checked it just before this event started, so I think for a tech company, we are doing quite a good job. I'm the CEO of the company, which basically means that I'm not super operationally involved in all the different teams, but I'm more working on the strategy for the different teams and things such as fundraising. I think we will touch upon that topic later on.
Yeah.
That's who I am, and I live in Rotterdam.
That's good. That's fantastic. Today, Charlotte, in our audience, we have entrepreneurs, people somehow involved with entrepreneurship, and I also welcome HR professionals who are joining us. Let's make this fireside chat as interactive as possible, people. So everyone, feel free to type your questions in the Q&A tab anytime. If you also want to share what you do, what you need, how we can help you on the chat, we can do that as well. Network. If you want to share your LinkedIn profile, we can also network. It's very important to network on these events. And I also thank those who sent me questions beforehand. I'll make sure we cover all of them. So, Charlotte, I want to start with diversity and inclusion. Last year, Equalture was selected the #1 diverse and inclusive company in the Netherlands. So, well done, congrats, because this is a huge achievement, right? So, I think this shows that you walk the talk. You fight for equal opportunities. Equalture supports customers to hire unbiasedly, and it sounds like Equalture is setting the example. I see that achieving diversity in teams is a challenge, not only to startups and scale-ups, but also to big corporations. There is a lot of talk, and I know many companies that try hard to achieve it, but very few succeed. And it's even harder for inclusion. Can you tell us a bit about how you have achieved diversity at Equalture and the benefits that you see to the bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that maybe one of the biggest mistakes we tend to make when it comes to trying to hire a more diverse workforce and to be more inclusive is that I think most companies by now, or I hope at least that most companies by now are working on at least trying to achieve a more diverse workforce. But I think there's two problems with it. I think that one is that we all try to look for diverse people, but I think that if you really ask a company like, hey, why do we actually do that? That a lot of companies are not really capable of answering that question. It's more like, hey, I think this is a topic, it's a trend. We see people around us doing it. I think it's candidates no longer accept it if you don't pay attention to it. So let's just do it without really being aware of, hey, what value does it bring to my company? And at the end of the day, it's more than just something that you have to do because everyone else is doing it. I mean, you also shouldn't jump out of a window if everyone jumps out of a window. So there, I think it lacks some vision around it for most companies.
Yeah.
And
we are in 2022. Do you believe that it's still misleading, or there is still some misunderstanding on diversity and inclusion?
well, I think what we diversity and inclusion is always a bit of a tough topic because I think we tend to talk about it a lot, and people are also maybe even a little bit tired of having this conversation over and over again. But I think that you see it now, right? Like Glassdoor did a very interesting research last year in the last quarter of 2021. And the conclusion of that research was that 3 out of 5 candidates don't even accept a job offer anymore if a company doesn't value diversity and inclusion. So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of companies have seen that it's actually needed and that they some sort of have to do it if they want to keep growing and keep adding people to their team and be successful at that. But are feeling more forced to do it rather than intrinsically motivated to do it. And I think that's maybe one of the issues there. And I think that if we then start to hire more diverse people, we all tend to apply positive discrimination. Like, okay, now we're only going to interview females for this job opening. Well, the power of
quotas.
Yeah, but it's not going to help you because I think the power of inclusion, because I think that inclusion should come before diversity, is that you hire people based on who they are and what they're capable of, regardless of their demographics, which university they went to, etc. And if you apply positive discrimination, then you don't really solve that. You don't equalize the playing field for people. So yeah, I think it lacks some vision around the topic. And if we then try to do it, we tend to do it the wrong way.
And what about the benefits that you see to Equalture?
Yeah, I think the obvious one that everyone talks about, and it sounds cliche, but it's really true. The more diverse your team is, the more creative you will be. Like I mentioned, we have people from a lot of different cultures, and they all bring different perspectives to a conversation. We also very actively promote that. Like everyone has an opinion, so make sure that you also use it in a strategic session. It attracts, again, of course, more diverse people. I think we absolutely don't have an issue with attracting a diverse talent pool because we are so diverse. So yeah, eventually I think it's a no-brainer. If you would only put, I don't know, females in their 20s or males in their 40s or whatever together in a room, they will all have the same opinion about things. And that's of course generalizing a bit, but
Yeah.
I think that you need it to keep ahead of the game. We are also selling internationally, and more companies do that. So you need to understand different cultures. So yeah, for me, it's really a no-brainer.
Yeah, I got a question here on my email. And how do you see diversity and inclusion in the Dutch startup ecosystem? Because I saw on LinkedIn a while ago, the Dutch Startup Association was leading a research, right? So a quiz, right? So about how diverse the startups, founders, co-founders are in the Netherlands. But I'm very curious to know the outcome. But what's your perspective?
Well, we sell our product in quite a lot of countries. So we are active in, I think, 16 countries, something like that. And I definitely don't think that the Netherlands would make it to the top 5, let's say. So I think it's a topic of discussion and it gets better. But if you look at, for example, I think the UK is a very good example. They're much more they're much further when it comes to this topic. Like we are getting there, but we are definitely not at the point on which you can say, hey, the Dutch ecosystem is sort of an example for other ecosystems.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. I think that we should improve a lot on that. And how do you see, how could we support these startups or other startups to create this ecosystem of diversity and inclusion? What could we do to support them?
Yeah, my personal view on diversity and inclusion, but of course that's it's not something I did research. I did not do research on this topic, but it's purely my view, and it's at least what brought us to where we are right now. Is I think if you really want to be a diverse and inclusive company, diversity and inclusion should not even be a topic of discussion anymore. It should be about objectively looking at people, objectively seeing, hey, is this person fitting what we need for the job? Is this person fitting the work environment? Can someone contribute to the team and add some value to the team? And then it's not important whether you're a male or a female, or whether you're Dutch, or if you're from Pakistan or whatever. It matters who you are as a person. And I think if you ignore the demographic part maybe of everyone in your team, and it's really about, okay, who are you as a person and what skills do you have and what do you bring to the team, then I think you really eventually promote an inclusive environment. So yeah, I would say embrace objectivity in everything what you do, and stop emphasizing it so much, because I think that the more you emphasize this topic, the more it becomes sort of a difficult discussion for you.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Now let's talk about you as a founder. When we first spoke, you told me you wanted to talk about your journey as a founder in a very open, very transparent way. You now manage a very successful scale up, but we know that behind every story of success, there are many stories that nobody tells.
Yeah.
Challenges we face, mistakes we made. I have my own stories from the startups I founded, and I know many others from the startups that I mentor and invest. I think that this is where we can truly learn from each other, Charlotte. So I'm sure our audience will love to hear more about your journey and experience as a founder. What can you share with us today?
Ooh. Well, I should try to keep that a short story then.
If that is possible, exactly. Yeah.
I was super inexperienced when I started this company. I had a recruitment agency also together with my twin sister before I founded this company. But if you compare it to this company, it was just the two of us. We had some corporate customers and we recruited some people for them. So there's not really, you can't really compare that to each other. But we just had a good idea, and I think that what really helped us is that we were very young when we started this company. So I think we were like 21 or 22 years old when we started sort of working out the idea. And the benefit of that is that you're super naive still, and you're super blank in I never experienced building a team, setting up a marketing strategy, developing a product. So as a result of that, I think I underestimated everything. But I also didn't see any obstacles along the way. And I think that has been a huge help for me, because with every struggle we experienced, we were like, okay, well, this is a problem. Let's just fix it. And then, of course, maybe 2 days later, another problem came up. So yeah, for example, we needed to raise funding from day one to start our company, because Fleur and I did not have any experience with technology. So everyone was saying like, you're crazy, you're going to start a tech company and you have no clue about technology. So we needed to find a team to build the product from day one, and we needed funding for that. So we raised 250,000 euros even before we had something. And I literally just Googled, how do I raise funding for my startup? And I think I had some luck along the way.
But this is remarkable, 250K.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For the first version. So I think that shows how naive I've been along the way. Like, everything was new to me, and with everything I was just like, okay, it's new. I haven't tried it before, so I think I can do it, unless it proves that maybe I'm not capable of doing it. And I think that really marks my journey as a founder. So I made a lot of mistakes. I think I could have saved at least €500,000 if I would have done this at least once before. But I always say you also need some money to learn, especially when it's your first startup. So, well, I definitely used my learning budget, I'd say. But I think what's most important for me in my journey, because of course from the outside world we look like some sort of a successful scale up now, but we also have a lot of struggles still, and we are also reinventing the wheel every day with what we are doing. So I think what's most important for me as a founder is we always have a golden rule here at the office. We celebrate everything that happens. So we have downstairs in the office, we have an entire wall full with bottles of champagne. So I think there's at least 100, 200 bottles by now. And we celebrate everything that we think is remarkable enough. So a new colleague, a new market, a product update, etc. But we also celebrate the failure. So if something goes wrong, then we share it with everyone in the team. We make a joke about it. We take our learning points from it and we continue. So I think it's good to you learn from failures and you get happy from the milestones that you achieve. And I think it's important to balance both if you run a startup.
And talking about failures, right? So it's important to learn from and make some jokes and learn from them, right? So, but what advice would you give to other founders facing the same challenges in the same situation? For example, founders who are not technical founders, so they are not developers, they have a business idea that needs a platform development, a software development, for example, and they need to raise funds, right? So what advice would you give to these founders, for example?
Well, I think on a more general note, so apart from specifically funding, I think it's mainly a trend in the Netherlands, but I don't know if that applies to different countries as well. But here, we are really afraid of potential failure. And if you had a startup and it failed, then in the Netherlands there's some sort of atmosphere that you can't try it again because you failed, so you're not capable of doing it. And I'm always like, just try. What's the worst thing that can happen to you? At least I mean, if you do it with your own money and you put a lot of money in your company, I do get that there's a lot of risk, but what is the worst thing that can happen to you? Maybe my company also still fails next year. Maybe we make a wrong decision and it turns out that we are not capable of growing the company. Then I had an amazing journey. I learned a lot from it, way more than I would do if I would work for a company. So I actually only see the benefits of it. So I'd say don't be afraid if it's your first time or if you don't know something. Google is your best friend. There are always people who want to help you. Finding money for your startup is also really not impossible. There's way too much funding out there, so people really want to give it to you. And I always say, if I have an idea and I would pitch it to a couple of people and at least one person gets enthusiastic about it, well, do the maths. How many people do there live in the world? There will at least be a couple of thousands, maybe even million people.
Yeah.
Will also believe in your idea. So you will for sure find someone who can help you with it. So don't be afraid.
Yeah. You were talking about your product, right? I'm just wondering, how different is your current product from when you started?
Oh, it's a completely different product. I recently, with my first investor, he's still in the company. I recently checked out I can't even call it a pitch deck. I sent them like 2 pieces of paper and there was basically nothing in there. But it was a completely different product. One thing is still the same though, and that is the why behind it and the mission. I think that's important. I mean, for me, what our mission and our vision as a company is what makes me stand up every day and be excited to go to work. But of course, along the way, you find out that your product has a lot of features that don't contribute to that mission, or you make some mistakes and how you develop stuff. So also on that, don't be too strict on sticking to your initial plan if you don't lose the why behind your plan.
Exactly. I want to talk about the challenge of finding a co-founder, because I know that there are people here, our attendees, facing the same challenge. One of the main challenges founders face, actually, right? And I hear that every day from startups, is that there is often a founder with a business idea, and she or he struggles to find another founder with the same vision and complementary skills. Mm-hmm. How did that work for you? Because I know that it's a bit different. Was that obvious that your sister was your co-founder from the start?
Yeah, definitely. And we have a third co-founder, by the way. So I will explain that in a bit. But
okay.
So I've always said to my parents, like, one day I want to become an entrepreneur. I was apparently 10 years old when I said that for the first time. And then when I was 19, I thought, okay, let's give it a try. And that was when I started my recruitment agency. But I also knew from day one, and that's really a personal decision. So I'm not saying to anyone in the call here that you should never start a company on your own. But for me personally, looking back at everything we did, but also all failures that we faced, I think this is not a journey that I would want to go through on my own, because it's not fun to celebrate milestones together, but it's even less fun to overcome failures on your own.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it was sort of a no-brainer that my twin sister became my co-founder for this company, as we already had a company together. I must say, though, it worked out perfectly fine because we are very different in the company. So we also have a very different focus and we have completely different skill sets. We also have that in our product, some sort of feature where you can assess your team and then you can see the composition of your team. So if you would do that with your founding team, you can exactly see, like, okay, this founder has these skills, and we see that we are very complementary to each other. And we added a third co-founder, Jaap, that's her CTO, who joined a year after we started. And the reason why we picked him is we needed a CTO. So we were desperately looking for someone with some technical experience to make sure that we would spend our money wisely. But again, Jaap is someone who is completely different from my skills, my personality, but also Fleur's skills and personality. So we do get along super well. We are almost some sort of, Jaap almost feels like my brother. We can also argue like we are brother and sister. But at the end of the day, we all represent a different skill set. I think that the danger, the danger that you should be aware of when you're looking for a co-founder is you hear it a lot, right? That people start a company with a friend, for example. Is that one, be critical, because once you pick your co-founder, there's no way back.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're not exactly the same. So if you I don't know, have an incredible idea with a friend, and it turns out that you're both fantastic analytical thinkers, but you both have difficulties with communicating, and you're both very individualistic, and etc., then you are going to miss crucial skills and soft skills to be able to build a company. So that's the best advice I think I could give.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Yeah. And it's also important to respect this work-life balance aspect as well, especially when, for example, you co-founded a startup with your sister, and I face it the same with my co-founder. My wife was my co-founder in one of these startups, and especially in the very beginning, we struggled a lot with work-life balance, right? So it's very important, and it doesn't matter if it's your wife, your sister, your brother, someone from your family, right? Work-life balance plays a very important role every time. Exactly.
Although I must admit that my work-life balance is also not maybe the perfect example, but I think it's more about knowing what you need in terms of work-life balance. Because, for example, my sister can draw very clear boundaries for herself, and also needs that time off to some sort of process everything that happens and be creative again. And I'm really a workaholic, so I prefer working every day as many hours as I can. But for me, that also works. So I think work-life balance is not necessarily about we all need to work X hours a day and then we need to rest. It's more about knowing what works well for you. And if it means that, for example, I'm capable of working way more hours than my other co-founders do, then we should not get into an argument because of that. Like, oh, I work way more than you are doing and we are not contributing equally to the company. It's more about you need to draw your own boundaries and make sure that you respect those boundaries. I think that's most important.
Yeah, I would say, Charlotte, not sure if you agree with, but it's finding the right balance between work and respecting personal boundaries, right? So I think that's key. That's key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about something that 10 out of 10 startups want to talk about: fundraising. You mentioned it before, right? So, but I hear from many entrepreneurs that raising funds in the Netherlands has its challenges, especially for non-technical founders, and it's even more challenging for female founders. Some data shows that less than 10% of the startups founded in the Netherlands are founded by women, less than 10%. And less than 1% of the funds raised go to women-founded startups. Can you share, you shared it a little bit, but can you share more about your experience with fundraising? Any good tips for the founders in the audience who are looking for investment right now?
I did a couple of investment rounds already, so I'm actually now hopefully wrapping up my most recent one, and I raised, I think, almost 2 million now. So from VCs, but also from angel investors. To briefly elaborate on the comment about females, I really do agree with you, and I think that maybe females could be disadvantaged if they are looking for fundraising and they're maybe in the age where they might get kids or something like that. But I also do think that there are just not a lot of startups out there founded by females that have the ambitions that require funding. Like, I think that there are a lot of female entrepreneurs, but it's usually more the smaller companies or the web shops of these kinds of things where you simply don't need funding. So I think that's
good point.
Personally, I never experienced any issues with the fact that I'm a female, and I mean, like, our founding team is 2/3 female. So I think that if there would have been any fundamental issues, then we would have definitely experienced it. But I never did. I was just confident about my story, and I think what's important if you start with fundraising, two things. I think one is for an investor, it's really about you as an entrepreneur and a founding team, and they basically don't care about your company. And that sounds a bit more harsh than I mean it.
But that's true.
But that's like companies change, your proposition will change, your product will change, and eventually it's the founding team that needs to be capable of growing a company and adjusting to market needs and etc. So it's way more about, okay, do we think that this founding team is capable of scaling the company? And of course that changes if you go for your Series B, C, whatever, but at least up until Series A, I think it's really about you as a founder. Don't let it get to you if some investors say no to you, because fundraising is just like a sales process. Like if we sell our product, we also don't get a yes from everyone that we speak with. I think it's important to be confident about what you do as a company, and I hope that every founder is confident about what they do, because otherwise you wouldn't start a company at all. And if you don't show that confidence, if you let it get to you when you get a lot of no's, because you will get that along the way, you will also meet a lot of investors that don't fit your specific needs. They will see that that's some sort of doubt that you have in your own proposition, and then of course chances are little that you will successfully raise it. So don't lose faith in what you do along the way, because starting a startup is about dealing with a lot of no's. That's just how it works.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for that. And you have experience with angel investors and VCs. That's interesting. How different is it to negotiate with angel and VCs?
I think that angel investors don't even really negotiate. Like I know that when I raised my first 250,000 euros, we literally had two cups of coffee, 1 hour, and then he said, okay, let's do it. And then I basically said, okay, then this is going to be the valuation, and he was okay with it. So, and of course, if you are going to raise funding for with a VC, then the game changes. Of course, you need to prove a lot more. You need to provide them with a lot of documentation, forecasts, any track record that you have so far. The negotiations are way more tough is maybe not the right word, but it's not that polite anymore. Like you have your own lawyer, both of you, when you're going to negotiate about what the terms should be. Because eventually, at the end of the day, if you're raising funding from a VC, like they need to get money out of it. So it makes sense that they will fight for the best possible terms. So yeah, it's definitely more of a tough challenge if you raise funding from a VC.
Yeah, usually it comes in different stages, right? So we're talking about different stages. Usually there are some VCs that invest in early stage startups as well, early stage funds, but usually it comes in different stages, right? At different stages.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I know I see people here discussing in the chat, and I see some founders, especially Kumar. Welcome, Kumar. And then any word, because I know that Kumar is raising, right? So funds at the moment. So any words of wisdom when preparing a pitch deck to investors?
Well, sell your vision the right way. Like there's no such thing as of course, you don't need to oversell what you're doing. You need to be honest about the data that you have and the facts that are there. But eventually it's about your ambition and vision as a founder. And if you are, for example, if you're going to present a business plan and going to present a financial forecast, like VCs absolutely don't live on the assumption that your forecast is going to be reality. And they also really, I think they don't really care about your forecast. They care about your train of thought that you went through in order to get to this forecast. So what kind of decisions did you make? What are your assumptions? So make sure that VCs get some sort of a look inside of your brain and the way you think about stuff. And be very clear about your personal ambitions. Of course, there's a lot of different VCs that require a lot of different mindsets from a founder. So for example, I personally would never raise funding in the US because I know what kind of founders they're looking for. You get some sort of an employee for the VC, working day and night. That's something that you should want to, and it's definitely not something that I should want for myself and for my employees. So be very clear about your ambitions as a founder, and make sure that they understand your way of thinking. I think that's most important.
Good. That's good. Let's look ahead, right? So looking ahead, I always like to close fireside chats before we go to the Q&A with a question on trends and the future. So Charlotte, I'm curious to hear how you see recruitment in the future. There is no doubt that LinkedIn and automation tools like ATS, even AI, are transforming recruitment and the way HR works. How do you believe this transformation will play out, and what are the risks and opportunities in your opinion?
Well, I hope at least, and well, I think that's going to happen, that recruitment is going to be more and more around data, because I think that data at least gives you a better impression of someone than just looking at a resume. So I by the way, we are also in a very changing labor market. So I think that 50% of the jobs that we have right now won't exist anymore within 10 years. And the other way around, I think within 10 years, we have a lot of jobs that we aren't even aware of. So the whole concept of resume-based hiring simply gets impossible in a couple of years, because we can't select people anymore based on their previous experiences, because it's going to be so different from what we are looking for. So we are forced to focus more on your mindset, your skill, your learning ability, those kinds of things. So I really think we are going to shift way more towards personality-based hiring and skill-based hiring rather than resume-based hiring. I think the risk there is that data can also be heavily biased. So you need to make sure that if you, for example, with our gamified assessments, we always assess them on, is there any form of cultural bias? Do we see that people from different age score different on the game? All these kinds of things to make sure that the games are also inclusive. And eventually we are talking about hiring people. So what I do not hope is that within a couple of years, for example, the interview is not there anymore in the process, because I think that you can get a lot from assessments or whatever tool you use to collect data on people. You can reveal their behavior, you can reveal their skills, you can see if they fit in your work environment. But someone's true passion and intrinsic motivation to work for your company is, I think, something you would never be able to measure through a psychometric instrument or whatever. So I hope that we always stick to at least one interview as well, to make sure that we don't lose any form of human connection there.
Yeah. We are talking about data, right? So if you don't measure, you don't progress. Do you think that HR departments, they are up to date?
No, I don't think they're up to date. No. But that's, I think, what's one of the challenges for HR as well, and I fully understand that, is that the role of HR in a company is drastically changing. So it used to be a lot about human interactions, human judgment, administrative tasks, and we are basically automating a lot of those administrative tasks. Human interaction gets less because we let technology step into the process way more to objectify what we do. And as a result of that, we are bringing more and more tools into the equation, and tools that also come along with data. And so I think that the role of recruitment and HR is almost shifting more towards some sort of product owner and business analyst, and you should make use of the data that you have within your company.
Yeah.
And it's way less about the human interaction. So I think that a lot of people that are in HR nowadays, and maybe have been there for a while, are maybe not even the people that are getting happy from looking at data sets. That's not the reason why they ended up in HR a couple of years ago. So you see that a lot in more corporate organizations, because of course they have the budget for these kinds of things, that you have more and more some sort of product owners and business analysts joining the people team. The people analytics function, for example, is something that gets more and more popular. So I think that's definitely a transition that we still need to go through.
Exactly, I agree, and it's more than that, right? So the ways of working, they are transforming, they are changing, especially now with COVID, right? So COVID showed us that virtual and hybrid work are here to stay. I wonder how much this impacts, or how much this is impacting recruitment and diversity in companies. What are your views, Charlotte?
Well, I think that remote hiring, or at least a hybrid form, is a really good thing in a lot of different ways. I think two main reasons would be that you see that companies, their desire for data increases if they need to hire remotely, because of course you can't see a person in real life. Of course you can have a video call, but it's not the same. So although for me personally, there's really not a difference in having this conversation through a video call or seeing you in real life. I think I would still have a clear understanding of who you are and what drives you. But you see that people tend to rely on data more if it's in a remote situation, which of course contributes to an equal playing field for everyone. Because I really believe the more data we bring into the process, the more objective it will be. So that already contributes to diversity. And then there's also, of course, the aspect of like the world is the market right now. We, for example, we have quite a couple of colleagues that are working fully remote, and we try to get them to the Netherlands every 3 months. We try to get everyone into the office to make sure that we don't lose the connection and culture as well. And we, for example, said like, okay, everything within our time zone. So that is some sort of restricted to Europe now, but everything that falls into our time zone is a place that we could hire people. Which hugely increases your talent pool and therefore also the diversity of your talent pool. So I think that this is really one of the positive sides of COVID.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You were just talking about it, and I was checking our Q&A tab, and I got scared that there are a lot of questions here. Let's see if we can go through them. So, hey, Charlotte, I have a question for you. What about positive discrimination? When certain personal experiences come more in handy than data. Additionally, what kind of data exactly do you assess on?
So I think that it's two questions then in one.
Yeah, Niranjana is asking.
Personally, I'm very against positive discrimination because I think positive discrimination is a painkiller, but it's definitely not the solution to the problem. And I think it could even make the problem worse. Like, how unfair is it actually, if you think about it, that you want to make your organization more diverse? So you decide to, for example, only hire females for a role, and then someone who's male and is perfectly capable of doing the job and maybe the best fit is some sort of taken out of the equation because of the fact that you're. So I think that positive discrimination is definitely not a way to solve this problem. And I know that a lot of companies do it these days because they have some quota to make their boardroom more diverse and etc. But I think it's a very short-term painkiller and it's definitely not a long-term solution. And then I think the second part was, what kind of data do you assess on? I think you mean then what kind of data in my product, but what we really focus on is what are your cognitive abilities, so what is your intelligence level, what is your behavior and personality, and what are your cultural preferences. So what kind of work environments do you prefer? So we really try to combine with the cognitive side and intelligence side. We try to prove companies that also if you didn't go to maybe the best university, you could still have the level of thinking to do the job. With personality and behavior and cultural preferences, we really try to say something about, hey, do you fit the work environment? Do you fit the team? But also, do you add something to the team? Because I think that diversity in terms of personalities and behaviors is also really important. So that's what we focus on with our product.
Now, yeah, and this is a segue to my next question. Very good question from Leah, actually, not my question. So, hi, Charlotte. You call your assessment a gamified assessment on your website. Could you elaborate a bit on that technique of gathering objective data about candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we basically do, so we have a science team in our company. So we have a neuroscientist, a cognitive psychologist, a neurobiologist, you name it. And what we basically do is we sit down and we discuss, okay, what is something that we should measure, because either our customers are asking for it or we believe it's important to get to know your candidate better. So what we did, for example, last year is we built the first collaboration assessment game worldwide, which was a tough challenge also, by the way, to to successfully do that, but we managed to do it. So what we then do is we take a validated test that's already out there. Then we try to see, okay, can we simulate some sort of game setting where at least we think we can trigger that same behavior. So if you look at the collaboration example, our game is called the pitch, and we focus on a situation where you need to pitch a product with your team and you're playing against different teams, and then something goes wrong in your team, and how do you respond to that? We make a prototype. If we then think we're comfortable enough, we are going to build the actual game. Then we validate it. So we have a group of people, like a couple of hundreds of people from different backgrounds, education levels, etc., who plays the game as well as the already validated assessment. And if it provides us with the same results, then we know that it's scientifically proven what we do. And then we bring it on the market. And I think the really cool thing about gamification, especially when it comes more to the behavioral side of things, is that if you would fill in a personality questionnaire, for example, you have a question, multiple choice answers, you have enough time to read them all and think like, okay, I'm applying for a sales position. Well, probably they don't want to have answer B, but they probably want to have answer C because that suits the salesperson more. And in our games, we really track behavior that you're not even aware of. So if you, for example, start a game, how do you interact with this, with the instructions? Do you click it away very fast, or are you reading carefully? If something goes wrong in the game, what is your response then? Do we see that you panic a little bit, or do you manage to keep concentrated? And that is all kind of behaviors that someone who plays the game is not aware of when it happens. So you can really review someone's unconscious behavior. And then, yeah, simply by collecting hundreds of data points, we have an algorithm for every game that then calculates the eventual score of a candidate. So that's how that works.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then Phoebe, she's asking, what's your view on equality versus equity?
What is your view on that, Marcelo?
That's a good question, Phoebe.
Maybe good if we let you. I can imagine that you also have a view on this.
Yeah. It's I still believe that it's really hard to define, especially for corporations, right? So for corporates, startups, scale-ups, it's something that we have been discussing, and we should act more, to be honest, right? So in terms of it involves inclusion, in my opinion, as well. Not sure if you agree with that, Charlotte, because there is an overlap, I think, with equality and also inclusion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then also Marcella, she's saying, what helped you identify the very specific need with which you started your product?
Well, I actually don't know if I was really successful at doing that, because what we did, let me maybe explain what we did, but I definitely don't think it was the best way looking back at it. We wrote down, okay, what is it that we want to solve with our products? Then based on that, we wrote down, okay, what do we think that the project should look like then, and how should it function in order to achieve what we want to achieve? I had some money, so I spent that money on hiring a freelance engineer who could basically say, okay, if this is what you want for your product, then this is what it's going to cost you roughly. And based on that estimation, I started looking for funding. Something I definitely did not do that well is once we had the money, we wanted to start ASAP, of course, with developing the product. So we had a team of 3 developers, freelancers, a backend developer, front-end developer, and a UX designer. So basically covers then everything you need. And I wanted to start so quickly that I basically too easily said, okay, these are the requirements of the product. And if the developers came with an idea like, oh, maybe this is also a cool feature, I was like, okay, let's just do it and let's get started. And it actually turned out that we have thrown away a lot of features that we built there, and that some of them also didn't function the way we would want them to. So if by now the product has revamped, I think already twice compared to that first version. But I definitely wasn't critical enough about, okay, what should the product specifically look like and what should each feature do and what goal does it serve. So I would definitely say be very critical on that, because that's going to save you a lot of money you need to spend on engineering.
Good. That's good. Paulina, she's asking, what kind of companies come to work with you? Do you notice any trend?
Well, it's quite different. It ranges from startups to scalers, but also very big enterprise and everything in between. I think that the only thing that is a common denominator for everyone is that it's more tech savvy companies. So it's companies that are having an innovative product themselves, or at least have an innovative mindset. So, for example, we don't work for a law firm or well, those kinds of companies. Like there should be some sort of tech or innovative kind of aspect to it, because I think that otherwise it would also take a while for a company to adopt our product and to get used to all the different levels of innovations, like gamification, usage of data. It's quite a lot of new stuff, and I think that if you are really not tech savvy, then you might be a bit resistant towards those kinds of innovations. So company size, location, it's focused in Europe for now, but that all doesn't really matter. But there needs to be some sort of tech mindset.
Yeah. That is a very good question here. Mari is asking, do you also educate the companies on how to use the results of your tools and how to interview in a good way so that they don't add back the bias after they have done the unbiased gamified process?
Oh, I think Mari has a psychological background. Yeah, definitely. So we are not an assessment that you need to be certified for in order to use it. That's because we make the results very tangible and practical to read. Also for a hiring manager, very easy to understand. But we do indeed educate them on how to read the results, what are the conclusions you can draw from it. So it should actually be very clear when you look at the profile, but we always have an onboarding call with customers to walk them through a couple of profiles and discuss it together. And besides, we also have indeed interview guides that's based on the game score. So for example, if someone scores not so flexible on our flexibility game, and you would want to find out during an interview, like, hey, what causes the score? Then we have a bunch of questions around that topic that you can ask to make sure you reveal that. So we do try to also help companies in debiasing and structuring their interviews, although I must say that it's not really within our power, of course. So we can educate them a lot, but if they really don't want to do that, then they will still not do it. But we at least try to educate them. So what we also do, for example, is we offer unconscious bias training for hiring managers and the importance of structuring interviews. So yeah, at least we are trying, I would say.
Doing hard. Okay. And Juan is asking, why did you decide to hire freelancers instead of a software agency?
Yeah, I would definitely say go for a software agency next time. Because freelancers are usually a bit less expensive than an agency. but we would have saved a lot of money if we would have the structure of an agency. So that's basically the example that I was referring to with regards to be clear on your product requirements and each feature, and is there value in each and every feature. I think that if you would do this with a software agency, the preparation state would be way more professional, and I think eventually that would save you a lot of money. The only downside of a software agency is that it's usually a bit more difficult to make sure that the IP is also yours, and the source code, and you name it. Eventually, it should be your product, of course. And with freelancers, I found it a bit more easy to just put that in the contract, and they agreed upon that. So that's something that you should be either way super aware of. It should be your product, and it should be in the contract as well.
Yeah, I think it was not, this is not what Juan was expecting. I know that Juan is a freelancer, a good one, by the way. So,
sorry, Juan.
But it's nice to get your perspective, your experience. We have.
But if you to back up Juan now, like if you are an engineer and you can plan well, then of course it's capable. But what I experienced when working only with a couple of freelancers is that you basically miss the product owner in that project. And if you, as an engineer, get that concept of prioritizing, story mapping, etc., then of course it's no problem. But if you only have engineers and you don't have someone with a product owner kind of vision,
this is important.
Then it can easily lead to we're just going to build a shitload of stuff and then see what happens.
Yeah. We have 1 minute. Time for one last question. Lea, have you also considered assessing companies in the same way on their culture to deliver an objective assessment to candidates?
If I understand your question correctly, then I'd say we already do that. So what we do with our product is, if you become a customer, we first analyze your current team. So we let them anonymously walk through the different games, and by doing so, we can say on a company level, but also on a team level, and you can create sub-teams, like, okay, what are strengths and weaknesses in the teams? What are cultural indicators because of shared behavior that we see a lot throughout the different teams? You could even say, hey, I know a sales team of 20 people and 10 top performers, so let's create a separate group of the top performers and see how they differentiate from the rest of the team. So the team data is definitely for us a huge component in making sure that the process actually gets objective, because I think you might collect objective insights into candidates, but if your hiring needs are not defined in an objective way, then it's still a biased process.
Good. And with that, let me close today's fireside chat. Charlotte, I had a great time. Thanks so much for your time and sharing insights and your experience. I hope everyone enjoyed this event as much as I did. And stay tuned. We will announce the next fireside chat in the due course. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. And have a great day, everyone. Ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao. Thank you.